Is this a haircut?
It's a
Jelinsky!
haircut, man. They say hair holds memories, so I had to chop that shit off and on to the next.
Or were you inspired by Hannah last season dyeing her hair? Like, is it just first boots consistently? Are you going to Kenzie for the job?
Hey man, I was kind of looking at my Vegas brother, Sammy Leotti. I said, that's a fire haircut, brother. So after that eye limit, I had sand in my hair for months after that. So I was like, let me just chop it all off.
Well, first thing I want to ask, because we got several, for lack of a better term, things to get into, is how are you doing? Because I would imagine you've sort of been anticipating this for many reasons since you ended up leaving on day three. How are you doing not only watching everything back last night, but now obviously I imagine taking in the internet reaction as well?
Yeah, I'm actually doing really good. And
Amazing.
I kind of I've been doing good ever since I got voted out. Like, and I know that's kind of surprising to hear because the first boot is always supposed to be devastated. And of course I was. Like, Survivor's my dream, but every single person that followed me in Pondy was just solidifying like how much of a legend I was, and how there's never been a first boot to have such an essence in the game even after you get voted out. Like, they were even going to name the merge tribe Jelinsky.
What?
From what I was told, yeah, it was definitely talked about. So I'm doing very good, and it's mostly all love on the internet. I do a good job at what I don't know won't hurt me. So
Yeah.
I do a good job at looking at the love and not looking at the hate.
Well, let's start bottling that essence, if you will, Ode to Jelinsky, and get into this wild 3 day period. I mean, I got to start with where things ended because I was there. I watched through this entire thing, and man, I mean, it was a tribal council that was a lot about you. That was really eliciting a lot of comments from the other players, from Jeff. And so on paper, you'd think, oh, yeah, this is a slam dunk. Even in the moment you're playing up, oh, those words don't sound good. I think it's me. You end up going into your final words and you say you thought with every essence of yourself that it was Jess. What did it come down to for you? Did you just think that everyone was going to stick with the plan despite everything that was being said about you at Tribal?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question. I was certain it was going to be Jess. Well, actually, that's a lie. I was 90% certain it was going to be Jess because I wasn't oblivious to how smart everybody was out there. And I was able to gauge that quickly. Like, this is a season that will go down in history. And which is kind of unfortunate for me because of course I would have liked to play with a little less skilled players, maybe do a little bit better. But yeah, no, they clocked me. They, especially Q. Q knew I was a gamer, and I definitely didn't hide that. I mean, day one, when we were done with the sweat task, I told him, I said, hey guys, I'm gonna go look for an idol. And people don't say that. Like, that's kind of an outrageous statement. But as you saw, from the jump, we were in a tight alliance of four, and there's nobody to blame for blowing that up but myself. And so yeah, I was 90% certain it was going to be 90% certain it was going to be Jess. But there was a little inkling of me in me that was saying, Jelinsky, if they're smart, it might be you. And they were smart. They were smart.
Yeah, speaking to that not so core four, what I did find interesting is I was there to check out the voting confessionals, and Tiffany and Kenzie kind of both made mentions of like, you got to stop blabbing things, you kept sharing secrets, and that's not something that we were necessarily privy to. In fact, we saw like Tiffany, Kenzie, and Q say, "Oh, we're not telling Jelinsky about Tiffany's idol." Do you have any
Yeah.
context for those statements?
I have one, and I was honestly surprised seeing Tiffany say, "Oh, we got to go tell the boys," and then saying, "Let's not tell Jelinsky."
Mm.
Because I was like, I didn't even know Tiff had the beware advantage day one or two whenever she found it until last night. I thought she found it day four, so I was in the dark about that literally until last night. But the one context I have to that was after my journey, I pulled Tiff to the side and I said, Tiffany, look, we're tight, and I want to share with you. In my mind, Tiffany and Q were my number ones,
Mm.
but I trusted Tiffany a little bit more because I tend to gravitate towards females a little bit more. I just grew up around them, so it's kind of easy for me. And I told her, I was like, we got to keep an eye on Kinsey because out there, Kinsey seemed super threatening. She was talking with everybody on our tribe, and I didn't necessarily like that. So I thought she was kind of going away from our core four, opposed to me doing that. So I told Tiffany, I said, look, like we got to keep an eye on Kinsey. And then Tiff went to Kinsey and said everything that I said. So rule number one, girls got girls back. So, and that's something I should definitely have known.
Well, let's start walking through this journey. And before we even get to the journey, I mean, we got to talk about the sweat task here, because like it was something bold, it was something audacious, to the point of you hurling an hourglass into the sand. Was this sort of like an impulsive decision, or was this something you were weighing out, watching the grains of sand pass through the hourglass, and after a couple of hours say, "This is not going to time out"?
Nah, man, that was definitely an impulsive decision. But looking back, I'm super happy I did it because I kind of answered the fans' prayers for a long while, and I totally forgot about that until time goes on, and then yeah, I'm like, damn, I must have did everybody a favor. I'm happy I did it. I'm super happy, man. But yeah, I don't know. Did you ask about my decision to quit that?
Yeah, yeah. Was this
Or
something that felt sort of premeditated for you? At what point did you decide, okay, I think we're sacrificing a lot of energy here for nothing?
Yeah, so I was getting torn up. And what I mean by that is I wasn't wearing shoes.
Mm.
And I don't know why I wasn't. I just thought that I was Superman. But that coral is no joke. So I was walking up and down the beach, stepping on the coral for an hour and a half. And the biggest comparison I could give you is Fishback in season 31 when his feet were so swollen and torn up. That's exactly how my feet were. They were infected, all torn up, and I knew I wasn't doing good. But quitting wasn't even an idea in my mind
Mm.
until Q had mentioned it to me.
Oh.
And yeah, so honestly, props to Q because he was really able to spin that to his advantage. But in my mind and in my perspective, I was not going to quit until he mentioned it because I didn't want it to be my idea. I wanted it to be somebody else's. And if I'm being honest, like, I mean, you guys saw the jugs. I even had more water in my jug than Q did. So when he suggested to quit, I knew I was struggling, and I know Q wasn't dumping as much water in his jug as I was doing. So and granted, like I just had a good start. I was going 100 miles a minute during the sweat task when we started.
Mm.
But as we kept going, Q definitely started outpacing me. But anyways, long story short, I didn't think we'd be able to finish. So I was like, yeah, let's conserve our energy for the challenge. And looking at Siga, I thought we were a lot stronger than them. So losing the challenge was never even a thought in my mind until it happened.
So going over to the journey, track the timeline for us. How long did it take between that initial lie to Maria and then that eventual folding? And what was exactly your thinking? Was it as straightforward as what you told your tribe, which was like, listen, I don't want to give myself a bad reputation to 12 other people?
Yeah, so the journey was a little bit non-linear in the fact of in the sense that I actually was lying my ass off in the beginning.
Mm.
And so Maria presented a question to us. She said, "Okay, I have a question for you guys. What color was the pen on the voting parchment card?" And I knew it was blue. Tevin did not. So for the longest time, Tevin was trying to bounce that off of him, and Maria was believing me. But then and I kind of conceded because Tevin is just such a large personality. And when Tevin was combating me, I started to realize like this is when I started to realize when Tevin and I were going back and forth, it might be better to concede and not make 12 enemies than
Mm.
to make 12 enemies and go back with one extra vote. Not saying that an extra vote is not helpful because man, in Survivor, everything is helpful. But I just value not having 12 enemies opposed to having an extra vote.
Yeah, so when you get back, I mean, it's very palpable the way that Yanu is reacting to you. And even like the seven several thing, like it's very palpable to us, at least the way that people are perceiving you. Were you getting a sense of that out on the island? Or was it more so for you like, I've got my alliance, as long as they're fine with me, they can laugh or disagree with whatever I say?
For a while it was like that. Like especially day one and like mid day two, really up until the journey at that point when I kind of boxed everybody out of going on the journey, that's when I realized when I came back and was explaining myself, I was like, okay, I can tell I'm starting to rub people the wrong way, just how independent I was behaving. Like whatever I wanted to do, I was doing it. And that's a
Mhm.
really dangerous player in Survivor because you're like, what the hell is that guy gonna do, bro? Like you can't count on his vote. You don't know what's going on. So that I did start to notice in that moment how people were reacting to me.
And did you try to curb that behavior, or was it like a tiger can't change his stripes?
Um, you know, I at the time, a tiger can't change his stripes. But in my heart, I wish that I did change my behavior because I was definitely aware of it. I don't know, your mind just you become different when you're out there. Like seriously, you kind of go back to a tribal essence of human. And yeah, it's hard to operate out there sometimes.
You made mention of it, but when you talk about it being hard to operate, I mean, what people didn't see is that you had a lot more working against you than just like a lost vote. You mentioned your feet. I know you had said as well that like you figured out you might be allergic to coconut, so all you could drink was
Yeah.
water, but then you lost your water bottle. You got pinched by a crab looking for an idol. Like, talk to me about some of these ailments that we weren't seeing in the edit.
Man, I'm so up until last night, I forgot that there's gonna be other people in episode one besides myself. Like this is a story of everyone's season, not just mine, even though it's my doomsday episode. So I was out there acting a fool, man, like serious game changers Tony stuff. Like day one, I told everybody, look, I'm gonna go look for an idol. That night when the shelter collapsed, they were all sleeping until they all actually got up because they're like, where's Jelinsky? Where's Jelinsky? So I was idol searching. I stuck my hand in a tree and a crab pinched me or something, or a spider bit me. So my hand got messed up and I was just doing everything there was to do out there. And then that night they were like, yo, what I got caught. Kinsey and Bonu caught me. They were like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm looking for an idol. I just said it straight up. And then yeah, but my feet were torn up. I couldn't wear shoes for a month, by the way, Mike. I had to wear flip-flops for a month. Yeah, even after I got back home. And I lost my water bottle. I was super dehydrated, couldn't speak, and everything was working against me out there. And I didn't realize I was allergic to coconut until like the middle of day three because I was like,
Mhm.
my throat kind of hurts. I wonder why. And it was the coconut.
Last thing I want to ask is something you told me when we were out there was like, Jeff did say to you it's going to be very hard for you to win this game. Now, obviously, very different circumstances when it ended up playing out, but the reason why he said it is because you kind of have, such a bleeding heart. You are such a sensitive soul. And watching Tribal Council in full, I did get that sense where there was that period where you were talking about like I am not a deceptive person. I'm having trouble with this. You talked about really like talking about your parents' addiction to Kenzie and like, really opening up to her. When you look back on your experience and especially that sort of assessment, were you surprised by your own vulnerability out there?
I was not, no. And I knew Jeff was kind of expecting that of me when I came inside of the game. And from my perspective, I was actually being deceitful. So there was a lot of little things that happened out there that I was lying about. And I can't even give you an example because there are just so many things. But I mean, just at that tribal council, I was lying to Jess. I mean, I was the only one lying to Jess because it ended up being me. But I was trying to be deceitful. And I have no problems being deceitful, to be honest. It just didn't go my way. So I am surprised. No, I'm not surprised at all in my vulnerability. I've led an open life my entire life. So no, that does not surprise me. And yeah,
Yeah. So how do you look back on this experience? Like you said, like far from ideal, you were the one that was coming in saying, I am a legend. As you mentioned, legend certainly has very different definitions to it, perhaps much like the word several. It's not $1 million in your paycheck, but what did you sort of walk out of this experience with, considering also how young you are?
man. I mean, at the end of the day, I really have to keep the perspective of this is my dream, and I didn't have to play it so early when I was 21. So really, it was a blessing to even get on the show that I've been trying to get on since I was 18. And so I know what it's like being on that other end, not getting a phone call back, thinking that the casting producers are a myth. No, they're real. The whole team is real. And you really just have to appreciate what a blessing this all is. And I'm super grateful I got the opportunity. And I'm ready to do it again, Mike. There's no bigger transformation than a first boot to winner. So it's never been done before.
I mean, listen, this was so entertaining and this was so much fun. And I loved getting to connect with you, obviously, out there and see, the plans you had put into motion. And again, your headspace from an incredibly arduous life that you brought into the game and experiencing arduousness in a very different way out there. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it not. You made this premiere, in my opinion, what it was. As you mentioned, it definitely a legendary first boot status, and maybe a legendary winner status in a future season. Who's to say? But always great talking with you, man. And thank you as always for being so open about everything.
Mike, that means a lot to me, man. And it's truly an honor to go down in the likes of Zane Knight and Francesca.
There we go. Mount Rushmore happening. Well, all the best to you and yours, man. Thank you so much. Enjoy the new locks and have a good one.
Yes, sir. Appreciate
All
it,
right.
Mike.